The current plan metrics are, I think, making some good progress. We don't have all of the collision data graded, so I will have more information on that at our next meeting, but we are showing it a little bit higher than what we saw in February, but still continuing to make good progress. We've also, I think, been really successful at managing gaps. That's really, from a customer perspective, that's how long they're waiting for a bus beyond what they expect to be waiting. It also is a good indicator of how crowded the buses are, because on our busier lines, when we get those big gaps in traffic, then things start to bunch together. So we exceeded our goal for the rapid network with very, very good percentage there. And we also met our metro goal. We're going to continue to try to push those gaps down even further, but we're making steady progress. And then where we continue to still struggle is on the service delivery side, but as you know, we have a very large class in training, and I'm pleased to report that we're also tracking towards having a very large class in May. So a lot of the initiatives that we've taken over this 90 days are paying off in more of a systemic solution, which is what we're trying to get to. So this shows our strong success on the light rail side. We are, as you know, have a lot more control over the pipeline there, so we've been able to train operators and keep them trained in rail. Over the last month, our trolley routes have been the most impacted by our shortages, and that's something that we're trying to offset with this current class, making sure that at least half of them go to our trolley divisions to balance that. In the gap metrics, we also, as you know, had a strategic initiative focused on building the platform and making sure that we, as a transit division, could support that in a way that it didn't have major impacts on our service. And I'm really proud that, for example, we were able to keep the gaps on the rail system manageable while turning extra trains into Embarcadero and not periodically not having access to MME. We were also tracking how evenly spaced the buses were on the T-line. We had made excellent progress on this. We did see a little bit of an uptick. Our goal was less than 15% gaps, and we went up to 16% in March. Perhaps fatigue related for that construction project, but we did, I think, deliver strong service during that construction, which is important to retaining our customer base. And then the last challenge is how we're achieving on-time performance on our infrequent routes. And there, I think you've heard me say that it is important to follow a schedule because they don't come very often. People need to be able to rely on them. And so our focus has been on making sure that all of the service is filled on those routes and doing more and more line management to try to get them back to where our goal is. On the subway side, we continue to learn more and more about subway delay. Our overall goal is to reduce the amount of time that people are spending at platforms and also between platforms. We continue to see subway delay trend down in this 90-day plan. In February, we had experienced a 13% reduction in delay. In March, it was closer to 6%. Our short-term goal that we're trying to drive at is 10%. And so what we're doing to try to kind of tighten that is looking particularly at our AM period where we didn't see as big of an improvement, and particularly looking at how we turn trains around at Embarcadero, which we've been steadily reducing, and then also build on our successes at West Portal, and I'll share a little bit later in the presentation some of the improvements we're pursuing there. The overall travel time has been very stable during this period, and we have seen a downward decline, particularly from Embarcadero to West Portal, which is our longest stretch in the PM peak. It's also our longest travel time, and what we're really trying to reduce further. Over this period, I'm pleased that our overall number of major incidents did drop. We had 5 in the month of March. Our goal is 4. Our long-term goal is 0. But the incidents that we did have that I wanted to share with you, one is we had a broken pantograph. It happened in a tricky spot at Church and DuBose. So getting the vehicle out of the pathway and then also managing service in the interim did disrupt service longer than I would have liked. But it was sort of a one-off mechanical failure. We also had, on March 23rd, very early in the morning, we had a crack in the track near Van Ness. This is, I think, an example of a success. We do have a rigorous rail inspection program as part of their routine preventative maintenance. They identified this crack, and it did need to be repaired before we could bring trains back into service. What we did was, before service started up, or within the first hour of service, we did put in a kind of a temporary repair, and then they went in a few days later and they actually replaced the entire piece of track. So we were able to operate with a slow zone in the short period of time, and now it has since been replaced. And then the third area was near Forest Hill. We had a vehicle ATCS failure, and there we did work closely with the operator, because part of why we had this delay was that the communication with central control was not very good. The operator train was not functioning, but did not immediately call the control center, and so that, I think, extenuated the delay. So really working to make sure that everybody understands their role and how important it is to keep people moving in the subway is, I think, the biggest lesson learned that we took from that item and are trying to share with staff moving forward.
And Ms. Kirschbaum, before we leave that slide, for those people who may not remember, the pantograph is where the train...
It's what connects the train to the overhead power system.
Thank
so
you.
It's the gasoline of the train, so to
Thank
speak.
you.
In all these incidents, we do review them as a group and try to understand what our service response was, where we have opportunity for both an improved response, but also a prevention of the incident. One of the biggest milestones to come out of this 90-day plan was the transition of rail to the Transportation Management Center. Is that better? Thank you. Was a transition of rail to the Transportation Management Center. This allows us to use all of the modern tools, and as well as to really have confidence that anywhere within the system our operators can hear us and communicate with us. This is a photo of the older system, and I wanted to share it with you so that you have an opportunity to see kind of how far we've come. This is the new modern center. This is on the first day that we had our rail folks up there, and what it means for them to have access to all of the big screens, being able to track the platform loads and the on-time performance, and have all of these other tools, along with being supported by a multimodal team. So not only do we have the rail controllers here, but they're supported by rail maintenance, bus operations, as well as parking control officers who can help identify where we have bottlenecks or other issues. And then kind of at the center of the Transportation Management Center are our public information officers. And what we've tried to take to heart after the feedback from the last meeting is just how important their role is to communicate when we have delays. And it's still a work in progress, but we are really emphasizing making announcements directly into the trains when we have delays, as well as into the station. So that is being built into all of our communications with our controllers and with our public information officers and all of our trainings. And when we have an incident and we don't have the communications we expect, we're also circling back with folks so that they really understand the importance of it. The last thing I wanted to talk about related to the subway is West Portal. We also appreciated the feedback that, as valuable as the parking control officers are, we also want to be moving towards a more self-sustaining system. So we'll be bringing to you in May a set of short-term solutions, particularly aimed at the morning commute, that we think can reduce the amount of auto traffic that are going in and out of West Portal and really prioritize that area for the thousands and thousands of people that are coming by bus and walking and by train. So we are in the process now of sharing that with some of the stakeholders in West Portal, and we will have something to bring back to you in May. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on in my presentation is switchbacks. We are doing, for the first time, we have made a commitment to stop doing switchbacks on the T-line. And it is giving us an opportunity to respond to some longstanding customer feedback that it's frustrating and challenging when they're headed towards the end of the line and then their train gets turned back. And I know many of you know this, but I just wanted to kind of clarify why we do switchbacks in the first place. This diagram is intended to capture it. Because our system has a lot of sections where we're in mixed traffic or where we have different conditions, kind of by nature, trains start to get closer together over the course of the day. And it can create a situation where we might have 3 trains all going the same direction in close sequence and nothing coming in the other direction. And so in order to prevent very long gaps for customers who are waiting to go in the opposite direction, we will, for example, here, turn the middle train around so that we get back to that kind of optimal spacing that we would have out on the line. And the reason that we do switchbacks are typically because there's a lot of bunching in one part of the line and then a big gap somewhere else that we don't want customers to have to wait long periods of time. Other reasons, though, that we do it are if there's something blocking a line. So, for example, if there's a medical emergency or if there's a breakdown or if there's some sort of issue that we can't get to the end of the line. So even under our approach to 3rd Street where we have no switchbacks, there may in some cases be a need for switchbacks just related to mechanical and other incidents that we experience on the line. So we started April 6th. We chose April 6th for a number of reasons. We wanted to make sure we were set up to succeed. April 6th, we implemented new schedules. Not having enough time to get from point A to point B was one of the major reasons that we were doing switchbacks system-wide. So by adding additional time into the schedules, we're optimistic that our overall number of switchbacks is going to be reduced, but it also will allow us to be more successful in the 3rd Street corridor in particular. The second reason was that we would be in the new management center, and the new management center has better tools to monitor the service, and when trains start to get close together, we can make interventions sooner to keep them better spaced rather than waiting till they're all bunched together and then having to do the switchback. And then the third thing that we've been experimenting with is having an extra train along the line so that when we do experience a gap, we can slot it in so that we reduce the amount of waiting time. So this is something that we're working on, we're practicing. The first week we did, in some instances, have gaps longer than I would have liked, and that's something that we're regrouping on with our staff in both the control center and in the field so that we can make improvements in real time. So just in conclusion, the 90-day plan continues to be a very effective tool for us to take what sometimes can be big and challenging problems and create more bite-sized pieces. We're going to continue to do that. I want to make sure we get a lot of staff input over the next 4 to 6 weeks so that there's a real buy-in investment in the plan. So my intent is that we would start our third 90-day plan around the beginning of June. Many of the initiatives that we're working on now will continue.